it goes in phases.
Okay.
I'll get super motivated, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So why is that? Why are we getting so burnt out, feel like creatively?
Okay, welcome to Illo Talk, Student Edition. What we're doing in this show, if you haven't seen the first episode, is we are getting students and we're going to talk about how to get jobs and the things that you should be doing to make yourself more attractive to an employer or to a client, and all of the different, aspects of things that it takes most people, 3 to 7 years, sometimes longer, to kind of figure out. So my goal is to see if I can get everybody there faster, hopefully before graduation or just after, so that there's not that kind of time period transition in between. You kind of chose this topic. You want to kind of kick it off?
Yeah, I guess this has been something that I've struggled with, which is where, you have a stroke of inspiration or something like that, a perfect creative idea comes to you and then you execute it and you're excited about it, but maybe you're not creating often.
Okay.
And also when, you only create something when someone comes to you with it all laid out and they're in class, we have class assignments. And I get enough class assignments where I stay busy, but sometimes I don't know if I'm pushing myself quite in the same way.
This is I think how most people operate. So we'll just write most people here. And there's kind of these spikes, right? So we're gonna have a huge amount of production. You're burning the candle at both ends, you're really productive. You've got a deadline, it's an assignment, or you've got a whatever, the muse has spoken to you, so you've got your inspiration going on. And then we crash. And so this is a normal baseline. And then we crash, and then we sort of kind of don't do anything for a while and are retired or whatever. And then we spike again because somebody pays us money to do a logo or whatever. And then we spike again. And then we kind of do some stuff, and then there's a deadline. But mostly you have these huge periods of time here where we're not doing anything. Is that kind of the issue?
Yeah, and sometimes I'm not sure if I'm exhausted or if it's some people might call it creative block, but that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, so let's talk about reasons that this happens, and you guys can jump in as well. But why? Well, first off, this isn't just Nick, because I used to do this as well. But do you guys have kind of this experience as well, where it's kind of these all or nothing? I call it kind of the neuron thing. It's like the all or nothing firing.
Yeah, actually, quite frequently.
Okay, so why do you think this is happening? Why do we go into these slumps where we're not producing?
We lose motivation.
Okay, so motivation is one.
I feel like once you complete something, you don't have a clear goal to start on something else right away.
Okay, so yeah, I like that. I'm trying to figure out how to. Just you don't know what to do next. No clear direction.
Yeah, no goals. It's hard to make something if you don't have a goal.
Yeah, no goals. I'll just leave that there.
I think a lot of people I've talked to, they have a very one-track mind, and so if they don't have necessarily an assignment that they're working on, they'll do the next thing that kind of comes to them. So, they might stop creating because, maybe they just start working on their fitness or something like that, and they have a hard time balancing all the aspects of their life.
Yeah, I think that's good. So kind of multitasking your focus, and there's kind of I'm going to be doing this right now. Another thing I think is this idea of urgent versus important. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but I just want to write it down. Because you kind of mentioned I'm going to be productive if I've got,
assignment.
An assignment, a deadline. So, classes kind of supersede, your own portfolio building and that type of thing or whatever. I'd also like to add, I think this pattern of behavior with these huge spikes I think it causes these crashes, right? Because like in your 20s, there's kind of almost this like badge of honor of like, oh yeah, like I pulled like 3 all-nighters last month, or that type of thing. But the fact of the matter is like that's not like a sustainable way to work, where you're like staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning and then getting up for like a 9 o'clock class and then.
Can't keep.
So this is just an unsustainable situation, right? So the idea, what we actually want is if this is our baseline, and we'll call this like the ideal. Okay, is we want just like a steady level of productivity with the occasional, if we need to, we can occasionally, spike, we can occasionally take a little bit of a break. But for the most part, we're always making stuff. So the reason that you want that is because you actually get significantly more done if you have a constant habit of producing than if you are only doing it when you're being assigned. The other problem, so this is kind of like why we do this. The problems with it is you typically are doing this type of behavior, the artist by assignment only. So if you're only productive by assignment, you're never actually making what you want, right? You're always making what somebody else wants. So as long as we have, somebody giving us money, you have to do what they say, right? Or somebody giving us a grade, you're basically beholden to those type of things, right? But what if you don't want to produce those type of things? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because ultimately, at the end of this, either one of these, you're going to end up with a body of work that is being produced off of what you're producing. And people will look at that work, and then they will assume that that is what you want to do, and they'll try to hire you to do that thing. And so if you are only doing it for money or grades, then you're only going to be producing stuff that other people want you to make. But if you're down here and you're making the type of thing that you want to make, and then every once in a while you have to do something for somebody else, then the work that you're going to start getting, whether it be your client work or whether it be employer stuff or whatever, will be based on a body of work that you chose. So I'm kind of talking in the abstract, but give me some examples. Like, what do you guys want to get paid to produce?
I like to get paid to do like illustration and storytelling, and so if I can get into that side of things instead of doing like solely logos or posters or things like that, hopefully that's where things lead me.
Okay. And so what are you doing to avoid only doing stuff that you're told to do to get into this where you can make that type of work?
So I do a lot of like personal projects, and so right now I'm working on a comic book, and it's just kind of like an exercise to see how well I can understand how to tell a story visually. But on top of that, like I do a lot of like other drawings, like not necessarily for that. It's just maybe it's to build a skill to get my illustration to look better, or that sort of thing.
Okay. And then so you're doing those, and how are you? Is that still in this kind of like spike and burnout pattern?
I think so. I think like there's a lot of like spikes and burnout in between assignments and this personal project, and then there's times that I just don't want to do anything, and then there's times that I want to do everything, and so so I think it's in between all the spikes.
Okay. And how about the rest of you guys? What are you guys doing to get the type of work? What type of work do you guys want to do?
Brand identity.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't say that I do a lot of that type of work with clients, but on my own time, I've been trying to like create as many logos as I can and do like case studies, because at this point I haven't like gotten approached to do a lot of that type of work. So I'm hoping if I build I don't know, a little portfolio of that type of work that'll attract that type of client.
Yeah.
But it goes in phases.
Okay.
I get super motivated. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So why is that? Why are we getting so burnt out? Feel like creatively, it's not necessarily physically that I'm
Right.
feeling that fatigue. It's like a creative fatigue.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with, Aiden mentioned no goals, you mentioned no clear direction. That can be a big part of it, right? If it's just like an abstract, far off idea, 5 years from now I want to be an identity designer, that's really hard to nail down to like what you need to do about that today. So like part of it can be that if you don't have a non-negotiable of like, I'm going to produce this many things in this time period consistently. So there was a student, Jay Valle, he's a great designer. He does a lot of really good logos. I use him as an example a lot. He started the rebrand project where he decided he was going to do a new logo every week. He's going to rebrand a local business for a year. And so every week he did a completely new brand identity package. And that was on top of schoolwork and on top of agency work and on top of everything else. And so, but what it did for him is, whether he felt it or not, that he had made a public commitment. He was sharing that commitment publicly, and he had his own deadlines, and he treated his own deadlines the same as if they were anything else. And so there's some really key things, but the reason that it happens is not a motivation thing. This is like one of the most important things to understand, is that motivation is not the first thing that needs to happen. Motivation follows work. And so you start to work and motivation follows work. And so it's kind of like that faith precedes the miracle thing, right? You don't get the miracle and then have faith. You have faith and then the miracle happens afterwards. And it's the same thing. Motivation doesn't precede work. It's not like people wake up and they're all of a sudden like super motivated, right? It's you wake up and you do stuff, you reap the positive results of that, and then you feel motivated to continue to do that. And so it's habit building, but it's also this idea of urgent versus important. And so if you think that you're the stuff that has all these little tiny deadlines, right? All these, people trying to pay you nothing for a logo or whatever, right? People getting you to work for exposure, all the people that prey on students. If you put them as important because they promise you, hey, it's going to be great for your portfolio or whatever, then that's the type of work that you will continue to get. But if you say, I want to get paid well to do this thing, and that's important to me, then every day you're going to do something to move yourself towards that. And so if we're not careful, we can fill up our lives with urgent things. And urgent things are important, but only if you let them stack up. So your entire day can be filled with urgency, right? I have to get this done. This is the next deadline. This is the next thing. And I call them like the firefighters, right? You're just running around, just putting out fires all the time, and there's no, at the end of it, like, and we've all probably had months of that, like whole semesters where you look back and you're like, I got all the urgent things done, but I feel like I'm in the same place that I was before. There's nothing that's super impressive that I've produced or done. I don't feel like I've moved the needle at all. And it's because urgency is just, you're just putting out these tiny little fires. Important things matter a year later. And so if it matters a year from now, whether you do it or not, then it's important. And so if you decide, I'm going to do a sticker stint. I'm going to do 30 stickers in 30 days. I'm going to do an 18-day project where I produce a logo every day for 18 days. Or I'm going to spend a minimum of 30 minutes every day working on my comic book. Whatever it is. a year from now, that'll matter because you'll have a finished comic book. You'll have a portfolio full of, not everything you're going to produce is going to be great, right? There's going to be days where you put in the time, right? And you produce crap, and that's fine, right? Because you kind of showed up and fought that battle. But if you ignore the important things, they also matter a year from now. And so if you, at the end of the year, you look back and you've taken care of all of the urgent stuff, but you haven't done anything to move the needle on the important things that don't feel urgent, that'll also matter because now you're a year behind. There's another year that you haven't done anything. So we've got just a couple minutes here and we'll wrap this up. But what do you think could get you guys to move? Because I think this is a normal, this spike and crash is like a normal cycle. So what would it take to get you guys to move into a situation where you're pretty consistently productive? At least every other day you're spending 30 to 90 minutes doing something important that you're not required to do.
I think it's finding something that you want to do. Like you said, I'm pretty new to the design world, and illustration especially. I am actually a filmmaker. That's kind of what I want to go into. But I'm learning this because I think composition has to be learned in illustration.
Absolutely.
But I think it's all about finding what motivates you and finding what you want to do, and then working at it regardless if it's good or bad or quality. Just spending time with it. So I think, I just think you have to find something that you actually want to do.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, and that kind of goes towards goals. Goals and focus. So if you have, this is something that I want to do, and so I want to be here, what's going to get me there? One thing that can be really helpful is imagine what you're going to look like when you've arrived there, and then work your way back from that and say, what does that person look like? And so if they've got, if they've got 3 short films under their belt, right? They've been at a bunch of festivals or whatever, or they're working as a PA, on a major motion picture or whatever. Okay, what does that person look like? What have they accomplished? And then all you have to do is reverse back from that and start checking those things off your list, right? Because you can't just wave a wand and be like, I'm that guy now, right? Because you can't fast forward, but you can say, okay, so 5 years from now I want to be X, and that person has these 15 things either accomplished or completed or in their portfolio or whatever. So just start on one of those, and then you're just closer. What were you going to say, Clark?
Well, I was going to say one thing that's been helping me is setting time apart and then not letting other things take over it. So like it'll take the same priority as like a school assignment. And so if people ask me like, hey, can I do something for them during that time? Like I have something going on. And so
yeah,
because a lot of times I feel like it just kind of gets pushed back if I let it.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things that you can do is you make it a non-negotiable. And so, like in a lot of things in our lives, we've decided like these are things that are non-negotiables. Like I'm not going to leave the house without showering because that's gross and I'll smell bad. And so like we put that importance on that, and so it's a non-negotiable, right? I'm not going to miss a school assignment because I paid tuition, like I'm here or whatever, right? So that becomes a non-negotiable. But then other things that feel optional because they're not urgent, sometimes we tell ourselves they're important, but we don't sacrifice for them. And so you've got to kind of carve out that time and protect that time. And if it's like, every day I'm going to do X, that's fine. Another way to do it is like, no matter what, by 9 p.m., I'm at my desk doing whatever, or I'm going to get up early and do this. Whatever it is, you've set the time and you've said that's non-negotiable. And you have to decide that that's really important. And there are times where you have to adjust, but you adjust and compensate. You don't adjust and ignore. And so if you have a non-negotiable, You know, if you're one of those people that I'm going to hit the gym every day, and then something comes up and you can't go during the time that you were going to go, you're not the person who says, I'm going to hit the gym every day, but today I can't do it during the normal time, so I can't do it today. You say, today I can't do it during the normal time, so I'm going to do it at X. So instead of adjust and ignore, you adjust and, you know, you not adjust. What was the word I was saying? But anyway, you move it so that you're going to get it done. So those are kind of the main things. I would say this. I'd say decide what's important to you, and then decide what you need to do today about that important thing. And then beyond that, it's a non-negotiable, and it's something that happens consistently. And the thing that I think is really important is that you do it whether you feel like it or not. And there are going to be days or sometimes weeks where you show up and you do the work and you're not feeling it and you're not producing anything that's worth it. And that's still better than not doing anything. It's better to make, 5 or 6 bad things than to wait for this inspiration that may or may not come that you can't control. And so that's kind of it. And then the other things that kind of help with this, which we've kind of discussed, but just to kind of recap, stating your goals publicly and finding some level of public accountability where you say, hey, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna show up and do it. And you will find that your friends will start asking you about it. Hey, how's that comic book going? I haven't seen you post a page in a couple weeks or something, and then that helps because then you become aware, right? And so you have goals, you break those goals up into daily tasks, you make that non-negotiable, make a public statement about it, you share the work publicly, and then the last thing that can be really helpful is you get with a community or a partner or somebody else and you're accountable to them. And so you just check in, right? And you can make that official, like a 48-hour art check, or you can make it unofficial where you're just like, I'm just gonna touch base with this person, see how their project is going, with the understanding that they're gonna touch base with me and see how my project is going. And so if you put all of those into play, public accountability, micro goals, non-negotiable, and somebody to connect with, you'll move out of the spike and crash into a pretty consistent level. You'll still have hills and valleys, but it'll always be productive hills and valleys, and that's kind of how you do that. So we're out of time. But any closing thoughts?
Oh, I'm excited.
That was good, yeah.
Yeah, that was sweet.
Okay, cool. All right, so you can check out more of this. If you subscribe, hit the bell, all the stupid YouTube things that everybody says at the end of things. And we'll be doing one of these a week. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments of how you stay productive or what is keeping you from this level of productivity. And so are you experiencing the spikes and crashes? What have you done to kind of mitigate that? Any thoughts and future topics? Leave those in the comments as well. And we will catch you guys next week.